jumps to his feet to look at the Excanum in which he will study. At the entrance to the academy, they are met by two knights. They ask typical questions about the purpose of their arrival and what family they are from. Evan's tutor reports that they are from the Rigaz dynasty. They want to introduce Nero as a slave, but the knight is ahead of them, saying that the knight warned them about the arrival of the adopted son of the Rigaz family. Nero and Evan are in shock. Already inside, Evan warns Nero to stay away from him as long as he stinks so much. The slave must pretend that they are strangers to him, and until they ask, do not mention the name of Evan's family. Nero must remember he does not belong to the Rigaz family, but only serves her as a slave. A large hall in which all applicants for the role of a student of the Excanum Academy are located. Representatives of almost all noble families gathered here. They are greeted by the director of the Excanum Academy, Katia Maragas, a buxom, red-haired woman with red eyes, wearing a huge witch hat and a tight dress with a slit on her right leg. Today, the descendants of the great heroes who led the empire to victory in the last war have gathered in this place. From the family of the greatest magician, Kundun, and no less famous wizard, Estramus, and also from the royal dynasty of Elves, Lundale, and of course from the family of the Black Knight, Jin. The headmistress cannot say for sure, but she feels that the descendants of the legendary heroes will lead them into a new era, with their incredible history. However, it will be a story not only about these guys, but also about the younger generation that will represent the empire in the future. Each of them has noble blood and remarkable talent. They will work hard, become stronger, become heroes of their time, and the highly respected professors of the Excanum Academy will help them in this. As the director, Katia promises that everything they dreamed of will become a reality. The crowd cheers and raises their hands in the air. Nero stands behind everyone. He is upset that the speech was not addressed to him. The whole academy was built for the nobles, so they did not hesitate to say that Nero stinks, that he is dirty. Prospective students are lined up outdoors in rows. They listen to the professor's introductory speech. A swarthy, muscular man with a strange beard informs them that in order for them to become students of the Excanum Academy, they need to pass the exam in exactly a month, and until that moment they will be divided into groups and will be prepared for the test. If they fail the exam, they will be sent back home. This is a military academy. They don't keep weaklings here. Some of the future students are unhappy with this fact. They doubt the professor's background and whether he can be trusted. The entrance exam will be taken by a group of 5 people, and they have already been formed. After they are divided, they will have training for a whole month, and both boys and girls will also be in groups. They will sleep in the same room. Many people want to get into the same team with a guy from the Kundun family. Others will be happy to be in a group with the Estramus family. Still others want to be with 3 elves, and they will be thrilled to live in the same room with such beauties. Suddenly, one of the elves approaches the guys who said this and gives a strong slap in the face. She is ordered to return to her place, yet violence is strictly prohibited at the academy. And if she does not want to return home before the exam begins, then she can continue beating these guys. Nero, who is standing behind the guys before, looks with admiration at the blue-haired elf, who has already returned to her place. Neria, a half-blood elf, Nero and 2 other nobles, Jackin and Haken, were assigned to Evan's group. They will live on the 3rd floor. In room C, Evan is appointed leader. As a leader, he will be responsible for what happens in the group. If the descendant of Kundun is not happy with such a team, then the other 2 nobles are happy about it, nor hope to attract beautiful girls with his help. Evan's group is walking towards the room. Nero and Neria are looking at the decoration of the academy with interest. Evan, who does not want to live in a smelly room, sends slaves to wash. Nero will have to forget about what he said before they were in the same room, so the boy will have to call him master again. Evan shouts the slaves into the bathhouse, thereby showing his superiority over them in front of Jackin and Haken. The 2 of them go outside the room. Neria looks at Nero with a sweet smile. She wants to get to know him better since he is also a slave. The boy asks her race, and after learning that she is the same half-breed elf who does not have any special abilities like a full-fledged elf, tells her not to stand out so that no one will recognize her thoughts, feelings, beliefs. She needs to be as inconspicuous as possible. Being in the bathhouse, Nero feels like in paradise. He remembers the events of the past, how Murin saved his life, how he cured him. Even then he had to leave this world. The sisters would have received a reward for his courage and would have become peasants, but it seems that the emperor has other plans for him. Perhaps he wants him to open up and show himself. He soared up and forced the nobles to follow him, as the emperor himself once did. Nero's gaze becomes confident and resolute. He'll stand it at any cost. Nero has a mountain of clothes in front of him. He has no choice but to take all the suits and take them to the laundry and make sure that they are in the best shape by tomorrow. Nero watches with her hand to her mouth as the boy picks up clothes from the floor. The day is in full swing. Nero rolled up his trousers, stands in a huge barrel of soapy water, and washes things. Nero is walking towards him, dragging the same barrel behind her. Covered in sweat, Nero looks at it with displeasure. The girl with the best intentions wants to help him, but he hears that she was not ordered to chase her. His duties concern only him, they should not concern others. Nobles feel disgusted when they see how slaves help each other. Nero leaves upset. The boy continues to wash things with even more persistence. Evening. The whole team is sitting in the room. A dark-haired nobleman calling Nero a fat ass is dancing for him. However, no one taught her this. The second one joins in mocking the half-breed and calling her a carcass, says that it's not that she can't dance, she can't even walk because of her weight. The dark-haired, cheeky nobleman believes that the slaves were allowed to study with them at this academy because the same nobles as him pay taxes, so she should repay them for their incredible kindness. Nero sings a sad lullaby about a starry night beyond the hills, about an old magician and a child traveling together. The child was as nimble as a fox, rapidly moving forward, studying everything around. The fearless child and the carefree sage continued their way along the untrodden path. Nero watches her with sadness and considers her too naive, because she does not need to sing, because doing dirty work is her payment. The blonde nobleman doesn't like her song. Of all the possible options, she chose a boring, childish lullaby. He wants to hear a love song. He thinks slaves are terribly uncultured. Evan stops what is happening with a pop of the book and says that that's enough for today. Nero turns off the light. In the morning, Nero brings Evan breakfast in bed. This is a basket with milk, cheese, bread, and an apple. Evan folded his arms on his chest, dissatisfied with the fact that Nero carried his breakfast for so long and the fact that he brought only one portion. The boy tries to justify himself by saying that he overestimated the distance between the dining room and the room. Evan considers it obvious that it was necessary to bring food to his friends as well. Nero immediately runs off for 2 more servings. Nero, who has just woken up, runs after him to help. Nero is once again dissatisfied with the fact that the half-breed is helping him again, although she was not ordered to do anything. The two of them run into the room, but because of her carelessness, she knocks down Nero, who watches in horror as the breakfast basket falls to the floor. Nero's world went dark. The girl immediately gets on her knees with a rag to wipe the spilled milk. Evan orders to throw everything out and bring a new portion. If they can't, then they will have to give their portion. There are 10 minutes left before the lesson starts, and Nero also needs to get out. Nero starts cleaning up the place with the boy again. She tries to apologize to him, but he is terribly angry. He had already told her many times to stop poking her nose into other people's affairs, because today's problems appeared just because of her. Nero is trembling. She listens to him with horror and tears. Nero immediately remembers the words of his grandfather and realizes that he is talking nonsense. Sparring is arranged at the lesson. Not yet students need to choose someone from their group and arrange a little sparring. They must understand that they are in this academy to be soldiers. If they cannot fulfill this assignment, then they do not belong here. The dark-haired one from Evan's team chooses Nero as his opponent. The second one calls Nero, then Kunjuna considers them pathetic and that they will not be given many points for beating this garbage. Jakina and Hakna decide to put on a show and beat them up nicely. Nero is shocked that she needs to fight. She does not know how to do it. To win, they need to force their opponent to surrender. They fight with wooden swords and many give up at the very beginning. Nero's opponent asks him not to worry. He will not have to fight at full strength, because the slave does not even seem to know how to hold a sword. Nero looks at him with a bored look, even when he raises his hands with a sword up and swings at him. With one movement of his hand, Nero breaks the opponent's sword. There is a fragment of a sword lying on the ground. Nero's opponent asks the teacher for a new sword. He is sure that his weapon turned out to be defective and cannot believe that a slave could defeat him. The teacher is surprised because he checked them himself, but still gives him a new sword. Having received a new weapon, he once again wants to kick Nero's ass. He runs to him, but the slave did not even budge, and again the nobleman found himself without his weapon. The teacher, Evan, and Tarasu are amazed by what they have seen. The plump nobleman, already covered in sweat, calls the teacher again. He doesn't understand what's going on and starts saying that all the swords are defective. Once he starts fighting, his weapon breaks. The teacher stops him. These are the best wooden swords, and they break not because they are defective, but because his opponent is either incredibly strong or just knows how to break swords. Nero puts a sword to the neck of the opponent and he surrenders. Everyone is fighting, so the teacher tells all the winners to stand on the right and the losers on the left. If someone has not been able to find a partner in his group, then he can team up with someone from another. Teachers will be forced to take points from everyone who has not fought. Everyone is looking at Nero once again. No one believes that a slave can defeat a nobleman and generally knows how to use weapons. Nero finds a plus in wooden swords. They are surprisingly light, and most likely this is due to work in the mine, thanks to which he was able to get well pumped up. The second one comes to Tira's. Nero tries to talk to her. The girl was incredibly strong, but all her opponents simply do not even know the basics. But sword fighting is not her strong point. The elf can't understand why Nero communicates with her so formally, because they are the same age. The boy confesses that he is a slave, but she has never heard of such people, because she assumes that this is a race. However, she doesn't care about such things. She suggests ending this conversation and watching the rest of the guys fight. Tarasu gets angry every time he addresses her officially again. Nero has no choice but to agree. He is surprised by the fact that the elves may not have slaves. Evan comes in third. They already know each other, but Tarasu continues to address him not by name. 3 years have passed since their last meeting. Evan notes that the girl has changed a lot and is now a real lady. Tarasu stops him, because they are still in class, and such conversations should be left for later. Kundan's son suggests that she somehow chat over a cup of tea in her free time, since it is so difficult to start a conversation with her. Evan walks away from her and stands next to Nero. He reproaches him with the fact that a slave does not dare to defeat a nobleman. Evening. Miria is covered in bruises. She was beaten all over, and she was so scared that she couldn't even use a sword. Evan and his friends return to the room. He continues the same conversation that he started in class. Even within the walls of the academy, Nero should not forget about his status. He should remember his place, because he began to allow himself too much. Evan forces Nero to stand up like a horse as punishment for what happened in class. The boy obediently kneels down. The nobleman immediately orders him to laugh like a horse. Nero's former opponent only adds fuel to the fire. For the sake of his entertainment and self-affirmation, he allows him to ride a slave and do whatever he wants. He quickly sits on the boy's back and makes him move. Miria tries to hold back her tears. A fair-haired nobleman notices this and, raising his voice, orders to approach him and also become a horse. He grabs her by the hair and makes her move, even though it's so hard for her. She cries. Nero looks at her, but he is in the same hopeless situation. After a while they got tired of it. They complain that they smelled of slaves and jointly decide to go outside. Evan warns that from today, if he says horse, then Nero must get on all fours and run to him. Miria is crying because of resentment. Even her master did not do such things to her. She got hurt, but seeing the damaged and bleeding knees, the half-breed hardly restrains an alarmed sigh. Before that, Nero was frowning. Now he's smiling at her. Nero advises her to smile, and she herself will not notice how the pain will recede. And if the pain becomes less, it will be easier to endure and Miria will be able to hold out much longer. She just needs to be patient. And in the end, there will definitely come a time when the chance will come. That's what his father and mother told him. The same thing was written in the books. Night. Nero is standing at the ready with a sword, the tip of which is inches from Evan's face, who is sleeping peacefully on his back. This is a chance to change everything. Nero is determined. He is so tense that sweat flows down his face. The boy frowns. A picture appears before his eyes of if he kills a nobleman. As a slave, Nero is waiting for the death penalty. First his head will be cut off, and then his sister's. He sheaths his sword and walks away from Evan's bed. The boy will fall back on the bed. He is looking at the ceiling when Miria, who has turned her back on him, tells him that Nero made the right choice. The boy thinks that it's as if a monster is being born inside him. In the background, the nobles snore, who snap at them during the day to hide their monsters from other people and do not understand that the slaves see through them. While the nobles do not notice their monsters at all and do not even imagine how scary these monsters become. Nero has an empty look at the ceiling, and Miria can't hold back her tears. A new day and a new lesson. A teacher with a monocle explains to future students that each of them has his own mana and is able to use magic, as he does. Whether it's elves, nobles or peasants, absolutely any creature. Someone laughs. The teacher warns that if he hears it again, he will be kicked out of the lesson. Magic can be called the ability to control mana for the sake of bringing certain things to life. For example, mana is firewood. A piece of magic is the ability to get fire with the help of simple gestures, and the third is a spell. All this is a bridge that helps to use these very spells. And in order to use magic, you need to know the language created by the great magician, Lugard. This is the only way, and not otherwise, to gain access to this power. One of the students doubts that he has mana, and then the teacher approaches him to show him that everyone has mana. He opens his palm and asks him to imagine something rotating in his hand. He needs to fully focus and mentally imagine a picture of this thing. When he feels that something appears, he needs to shout anicapsha. The teacher looks at the guys with a smile. The boy screams, but nothing happens. Then the man forces him to do everything again. But this time focus harder. When a boy gets something, the professor makes him not stop. In the palm of the boy's hand there is now something similar to fire, only it burns with a purple-black flame. Now he needs to imagine that it is spinning. He needs to create a funnel. A little effort and a small flame intensifies and now looks even more dangerous. However, it is not necessary to always shout a spell. During the battle, the shout will help the enemy to determine further actions and think over countermeasures, but for a silent cast you will need to work a lot more. Everyone manages to create only a small flame. Suddenly, Evan utters a forbidden spell that increases the flame several times. No one is surprised, because he is a descendant of Kundun, it's in his blood. The teacher praises him, but with due diligence, each of them will be able to do the same. Therefore, this should not discourage them. They should know that nothing is impossible. So far they only lack strength. The professor comes close to Evan. He tells him that it is illegal to use forbidden spells at such an early age. The man is sure that the boy is well aware of this, and his personal mentor, whom they secretly hired, was once his colleague. Evan should stop trying to surprise his classmates. Everyone already knows how gifted he is. Nero sees his mana. He feels as if life itself is writhing in it. He smiles. However, in the next second, his face becomes as serious as possible, and he casts a spell. The flame flares up, not like Evan's, but still powerful. The guys are watching this with interest. They wonder where the slave got such power. The flame abruptly goes out and becomes even smaller than the Nerea. People laugh around. The teacher drinks tea with a smile. While they are not students of the academy, which means that the teacher can teach them only one spell. It is called the fire arrow. Someone from the crowd shouts out that even a wolf cannot be brought down with such a spell. The teacher immediately proves the opposite. Each of the targets is hit. The man allows the guys to train. He taught everything necessary at the beginning of the lesson. They just need to use their knowledge and imagination. The field was immediately filled with shouts of spells from different sides. While the guys were practicing, the teacher sat on the sidelines and drank tea with a smile. Nero does not succeed. His spell never reaches the target. Nerea tries to support him. She says it was pretty close. He almost succeeded. You just need to add a little more force and he will hit the target. A blonde boy from his team sets fire to his shoes with a spell. The teacher immediately stops the fire with one click of his fingers. He asks to be more vigilant and try not to injure classmates. It was the only shoe, the one that his mother made for him when she was still alive. It's already evening. Nero is still trying to hit the target, but the fire barely hits it and immediately goes out. With an apologetic smile, he turns to the teacher and asks for forgiveness. Insincerely, he says that he does not seem to have a predisposition to magic. He thanks that the teacher waited for him. However, he understands that the boy is lying and asks him to stop pretending, because the teacher can be severely punished for cheating. Now Nero is attacking in full force. The blow is very strong. Nero hides his true strength, because that way he will stand out, and a slave has no right to do this. After all, if someone like Nero becomes a hindrance to the nobles, then he is killed. The boy is crying. He can't hold back the tears. The teacher does not hurry to calm him down or somehow blame him for his tears. He just asks with a smile if he is afraid of the nobles. Nero waves his head negatively. He despises the nobles and his look immediately changes. The teacher notices that he has already met them before. However, they do not belong to him. They are the eyes of the creature that lives inside Nero. If he really wants to defeat these arrogant guys, then first he needs to overcome the monster in himself. After all, regardless of whether he wins the nobles or loses to them, this thing will eventually absorb him. And to suppress it, in fact, is much easier than it may seem, because it manifests itself only when the good part of Nero is most vulnerable, and he will feel her appearance. After all, the voice in my head will whisper, "Become one with me, just see what I can do." Nero should not succumb to these temptations. All this time, Nero remembers how Evan's friends bullied him in Nerea. The next lesson begins with the teacher's word. They have known for a long time that the exam will begin in 3 days. During their entire stay in the walls of this academy, they will have to go through 7 tests, and each of them will test one truly important ability. And this test will check the first of them. This will be a test of their strength. 4 spheres: calmness, strength, endurance, and wisdom. They came to this academy in order to become real warriors of the Empire, which will always be proud of them. Strength is the basis of all other skills, and every warrior should be able to use it. And only students who are able to demonstrate it are worthy of studying at the Excanum Academy. However, only 3 out of 5 people will pass. Nero and Neria are amazed by what they heard, but Tarasu calmly reacted to this. She is as confident as possible in her abilities and abilities. Test subjects can only use weapons and spells allowed by the academy. Many in the crowd are dissatisfied with this. They want to defeat their opponent and not lose and be eliminated first, never reaching the first course of study. In the location of this test, the professors placed monsters that will hinder their path. So to get to the end they need to destroy them all. In turn, the monsters will try to destroy them, but only weaklings will die at their hands. The nobles are indignant, shock is on their faces, they are not ready to die, their parents did not tell them about it. One of the professors who taught them magic is trying to calm the children down. After all, if they die, they will figure out how to bring the victims back to life. However, such an opportunity will only be if one of the healers appears next to them in a short period of time. The magician, with his arms outstretched and with a wide and joyful smile, tells them not to worry, they can also trust him. It will be great if each of them gives their best on this test to the maximum. But this did not calm the children, on the contrary, they became even more afraid. In their opinion, they are not obliged to do this, no one warned them about it. And in general, they are nobles. If their parents find out what is happening here, then everyone will have big problems. However, the magician says that it does not seem to have reached the dear students that there are no nobles, peasants, or other classes in this academy. There are only soldiers who serve under the leadership of the imperial army, and therefore, if the emperor says to die, then they will have to die. Moreover, their parents have already agreed with all the rules, and if they are so afraid of it, then you can always easily solve this problem. All the dissatisfied can just leave and leave the academy. There is silence among all the participants. No one will ever leave voluntarily, because then it will be a shame for the family. But that's not all the professors wanted to tell them. Now the most important part of everything they said. Before the participants reach the end, a wooden bridge will appear in front of them. If they meet their opponent on it, they will need to overcome him, since only 3 can become winners. The bathhouse. Nero is sitting in the water. He is once again arranging a brainstorming session. The boy analyzes what they can fight with and its swords. His inner monster tells him to kill all the nobles. In the morning, Nero wakes up to hear Neria crying. He doesn't understand what happened. It turns out that she is crying because of the boy's shoes, because now he does not have them, because a blonde nobleman from his team destroyed them. He smiles maliciously when he says that Nero's shoes look so comfortable, so he decided to wear them for a morning run. Who would have thought that everything would turn out like this? And as an apology, he will bring him breakfast. Now Nero's shoes are not wearable. With a trembling hand, he does not touch them. Neria turns to one of the professors with a request to issue new shoes. She understands that this is a stalemate, because the test will begin tomorrow, and without shoes on the rock, you can easily injure your feet. However, unfortunately, they have already moved the rest of the uniform to the storage, and since the person in charge of it will come only next semester, they cannot get new shoes in any way. The next day begins with Evan and his friends leaving to freshen up before the test. Nero asks the half-breed, who has disappeared under the blanket, if she is going to wake up, but she still does not show her face and says that she does not feel well, and therefore he can go without her. He leaves the room barefoot. Before entering the location, Evan's team is asked if they remember the rules. Each of them will go their own way. The difficulty is the same, they should not worry. Everyone will get to the right place at the same time as the others. Professors notice that there is someone missing in their team, but she will not be disqualified if she is late. But Neria can easily fly by, because time plays an important role in this test. The professor waves a white flag. The test has begun for them. All of them immediately took off. Black monsters with crystals in their chests appear in front of Nero. They attack the boy, but he does not think to give up. With the anicaps spell, he hits one of the monsters in the chest. Neria runs around the location, clutching a bundle to her chest. Her face lights up with a smile. She calls Nero when he just finished with the monsters. She sewed up his shoes using her own. She was lucky that the teacher had a thread and a needle. The girl asks to take shoes. It's fine, anyway, she would have failed this test. Fat and timid, but he's strong. Nero has been through so much, so she wants his dreams to come true. The boy puts on his shoes without words and leaves behind a happily crying Neria. A dark-haired nobleman from Evan's team fights Homel, while another destroys other monsters. He complains to the caretaker that he seems to have broken a bone in 2 places, to which he replies that he should not worry. He will be cured at the very end. The boy threatens that he will tell his father everything, and the caretaker, in turn, will share this information with His Majesty the Emperor. Both noblemen meet in front of a wooden bridge. Each of them complains that he almost died, and what kind of entrance exams are these, since they have to fight to the death. What awaits them ahead? Soon Evan joins them. He is late, but explains this by saying that there were too many monsters, he had no strength left. As soon as they think about Nero, he immediately runs past them and stands on the bridge. He turns to face them and stands in a resolute pose. The hand tightly grips the sword. The first one to come to him on the bridge is the one who rode him when he was in the role of a horse. The boy believes that the list of applicants has already been determined. The slave should go home, clean up the shit behind the cows. Nero should move away, because no matter how skillfully he handled the sword, there are already 3 of them and he cannot win. Nero plunges the blade into the nobleman's hand and, making a sharp movement with his hand, throws him into the abyss. Professor Mag immediately teleports to him. Evan and the other boy are in shock. The golden-haired nobleman enters the bridge second, who is indignant that a slave dared to kill his friend. He runs at Nero, who easily breaks his sword, but he does not get upset, justifying this by saying that most likely the sword is simple and low-quality cheap. The nobleman forms a lump of energy in his hand, because he believes that Nero's weak point is magic, in which he does not understand anything. Nero silently casts a spell that is several times stronger and more powerful than his opponent's anicap. He does not understand and does not realize what is happening, because the slave did not even utter a spell. He also falls off the bridge. Now Nero's opponent is Evan, 2 strong boys who are not inferior to each other in anything. The slave asks his master about how they found out that shoes would be required to pass this test. Evan doesn't understand what he's asking him, or just pretends that he doesn't understand. 2 powerful spells meet each other with a loud sound. Nero runs towards Evan, but he disappears using a spell forbidden for this test. He appears behind him, attacking him with a sword, but Nero immediately blocks the blow with his weapon. Professor Mag denies having seen anything when asked about Evan's teleportation. The descendant of Kundan once again uses an enhanced version of the spell against Nero and knocks him down. The slave grabs a ledge on the bridge and holds onto it with only one hand. Evan once again reminds the boy that everyone's fate has already been decided. Mr. Lucat has already formed a list of applicants. He who is born a slave remains a slave forever. Nero's sword falls down. Evan does not hesitate for a second. Coolly and without a shadow of regret throws a spell at him. He watches carefully as the spell dissipates and sees an almost unharmed Nero, who has almost climbed back. His pendant lies on the bridge and glows green. Evan is furious. His opponent has withstood. He wants to attack him with a sword, but the slave is ahead of him and hits him with a bunch of energy. Leaning on the ledge, Nero returns back to the bridge and disarms the descendant of Kundan with a kick on the arm with a sword. Now they have switched places. Most likely, they read different books. Nero helps Evan to climb back up. Neria is sitting in a corner and crying. She asks to forgive her father for being too weak and that the opportunity he gave her in exchange for his life. Nero approaches her with the conviction that crying is not crying. This will not achieve anything. The girl turns to him all tearful, tears still flowing from her eyes. Illuminated by the sun, he says that they still have time and they can make it back to the bridge and cross it. Neria smiles happily. A sunny day. Nero is standing on the street, leaning against a concrete fence. Each of them has only one shoe on his foot. Nero told Neria about how he got into the Excanum Academy. Folding his hands in front of him, he wonders how it happened that a half-breed elf got into the academy. The girl becomes gloomy. She starts the story from the very beginning. She tells that she grew up with her dad, they buried her mother early, and they continued to live and enjoy life, working hard. As slaves, they lived well enough because their master was a decent man, and, unlike the Nero family, it was not so difficult for them. They lived, not survived. But one day grief came to the owner's family. The son of the Lord, who was the sole heir of their family in the 3rd generation, was in mortal danger. The boy fell into the water and, unable to swim, began to sink. Then Neria's father saved him at the cost of his life. After his death, a will was found. It was written in it that he did not want his daughter to be a slave in the future. He wanted her to become free. Unfortunately, after that accident, the owner's son could not get out. Before that, the owner's son had been preparing for admission to the Excanum Academy for several years and everything turned out to be in vain. One single case changed all the plans of parents to raise a glorious soldier. After that, the owner lost all hope of continuing his kind and could not recover for a long time. He became addicted to alcoholic beverages, which allowed him to forget and not remember the death of his only son. And when he finally regained consciousness, he called her to his bed and handed her a sealed letter and told her to ask for everything she wanted. He would provide her with everything. The owner kept his promise, and now Neria is here at the Excanum Academy, but she is indifferent to what happened, because she will not be able to survive here anyway. Already as students, they are in line to receive the uniform of the academy. The uniform consists of black boots, a blue cape with cuffs, and a black raincoat that covers half of the chest. Neria looks at Nero in uniform with admiration. Her eyes are shining. She tells him that he is very handsome and the shape definitely suits him. The girl blushes from an overabundance of feelings and emotions that she has not yet learned to restrain. Everyone who changed their clothes should go to the ballroom. Katia holds a pigeon in her hands, which she throws up when she announces to everyone present that they are now all students of the Excanum Academy. The uniform that they are wearing is made of the best fabrics and leather sent to them by His Majesty Emperor Murin. From today, like this elite uniform, students' lives will also be transformed. Now they can enjoy life at the academy, train hard and strive up the career ladder, which will open up many opportunities for them. They need to go this way to the end, and becoming Zai rush into her arms. An awkward silence arises after the last words. No one understands what is in the head of the headmistress. The professors agree that everything that happened now was miserable. After the opening speech of the headmistress, they are divided into groups. Group A consists of Evan, Etram, Ban, Jimmy, Eruin, and Marie. There are 6 in one group, 2 of which belong to the great families, the Kundan and Estramus families, as well as the direct heir of the elf queen Lundale. Nero exhales with relief. He wouldn't be able to stand Evan for a year. Group B: Sehin, Lucille, Neria, Johan, Yuria, as well as Lucas. Maria prays that she is on the same team with Nero, but nothing happens. Nero hopes that she can do it alone. The group of Mr. Nero, Terk, Tarasu, Suji, Jen, and Jabina. The elf is immediately interested and hopes that this time they will not have to live in the same room. A professor with a strange hairstyle similar to the ears and whiskers of a cat, in a green raincoat, brown trousers, and a black t-shirt, asks her not to worry. Since they can't keep track of each of the students, they organize the rooms for girls and boys separately, and not like last year. Both Terk and Tarasu want to be the headmen in their team. They decide to choose the main one in any way. Outside the academy, a guy and a girl find a stone. The main task of their dispute is to break the stone into small pieces. Terk uses Guyon's double-edged sword to win and become a prefect. He drags it behind him, and then lifts it up over his head and cuts the stone in half. Tarasu considers him strong, but not everything and not always only the muscles decide. She pulls the string on the bow and releases 2 arrows at the target, which hit the target and break the stone into small pieces. Terk raises a white flag and accepts his loss. Nero is delighted with the girl. His eyes are shining, glowing with happiness. He definitely likes this group. There is no Evan here who would pretend to be the owner and make him do his errands and dirty work.